The water stopped running at 6:12 a.m. The sink coughed once and went dry. The city tag was already locked on the valve outside. The notice on my door said service was terminated for non-payment tied to an account number I didn't recognize. Restoration required clearance before noon or the line would be capped. Capped meant days, not hours. I pulled the last statement from my email. Paid in full. Receipt attached. The account number on the receipt didn't match the one on the tag. 2 digits off. Close enough to matter. I showered with a bottle and went outside to look at the valve. The lock was municipal, stamped, and numbered. Breaking it would turn a billing issue into a criminal one. I stepped back. My phone rang. The daycare. They were closing a room due to a plumbing inspection triggered by a neighborhood alert. Children without confirmed utilities at home couldn't be dropped off. Policy. Temporary, they said. I called the utility line. The recording said high volume and offered a callback window. The window opened at 9. The restoration deadline was noon. I stayed on hold. While I waited, a truck rolled past and slowed. The driver glanced at the tag and kept going. That meant the work order was live. Once a crew finished a route, reversals moved to the back of the week. At 8:45, the callback came early. The agent sounded new. She said my address was linked to an enforcement badge from a reassessment. Reassessment of what she couldn't say. She said if I could prove occupancy, she could flag it for review. I emailed a lease and a utility bill from last month. She confirmed receipt and said the flag was placed. Placed didn't mean cleared. Cleared required a supervisor. The neighbor knocked to ask if I knew why his pressure dropped. He said his sprinkler system tripped and flooded a patch of yard. He asked if the city had called me. I said no. An automated text landed. Account under review. Do not tamper with equipment. No mention of restoration. At 9:20, another truck turned onto the street. This one stopped in front of my house. 2 workers got out and checked the tag number against a tablet. I stepped onto the porch with my phone in my hand, the agent still on the line, watching them reach for the cap kit. The agent told the crew to stand by. They didn't leave. They leaned on the truck and waited for the tablet to update. Waiting meant permission was still possible. She said a supervisor could halt the cap if the reassessment was wrong. Wrong happens sometimes. Reassessments batch errors across blocks. She said my documents helped. Helped wasn't enough yet. I watched one worker lift the cap kit onto the curb. Not opening it. Just ready. The agent asked a question that sounded procedural. Was I the primary occupant on record as of January 1st? I said yes. She said the reassessment flagged properties with unresolved ownership transitions. Transitions could mean a deed change or a clerical merge. Merges take time to unwind. She offered a path that felt like relief. If I paid the disputed balance under protest, service could be restored immediately and reviewed later. Under protest meant reversible. Immediate meant water back. I asked the amount. It was higher than my monthly bill, but not catastrophic. I could cover it if I moved money. I opened my banking app. The transfer stalled. A notice popped up saying large same-day utility payments required additional verification. Verification again. I switched accounts. Same result. The agent stayed on the line. She said if payment couldn't post, she could issue a temporary override valid until end of day. Overrides required a supervisor signature. The supervisor was in a meeting until 11. That sounded like a second pause. End of day would carry me through pickup, through dinner, through sleep. I told her to request it. She placed me on hold. The crew checked their watches. One of them scanned the valve again and shook his head at the number. The other took photos. Documentation was starting. While on hold, my phone buzzed with a message from the landlord. The city had notified him of an enforcement action tied to the address. He asked if I was behind. I sent the receipt again. The hold music cut. The agent came back quieter. She said the override was likely but not guaranteed. Likely was back. At 10:35, an automated email arrived. Subject line neutral. Service adjustment. It said an override request was logged and pending approval. Pending approval felt like a solution if nothing else moved. The crew received an update. The worker put the cap kit back in the truck. Not locked away. Just set down. They stayed parked. I breathed without counting seconds for the first time. If the override cleared, the reassessment could unwind later. If it didn't, the agent said she would call back as soon as she heard. She didn't hang up. She stayed connected, listening to the same silence I was. At 11:12, a second text came in. Enforcement escalation scheduled. No date, just scheduled. The truck engine turned over. They didn't leave. They pulled closer to the curb, aligning with the valve. The pause was still there, but it had weight now, and I could feel it thinning. The override never cleared. At 11:31, the agent said the supervisor meeting ran long. Meetings always run long when decisions carry names. The escalation broke sideways. The neighbor texted from across the street. His basement sump alarm was going off. Pressure drop had triggered a backflow issue. He said a city inspector was on the way. That pulled a new clock into the room. Inspections don't care who's right. They care what's active when they arrive. The truck doors opened again. One worker pulled on gloves. The other radioed dispatch and read the tag number out loud. Hearing my address spoken like inventory tightened something in my chest without naming it. The agent said if an inspector logged secondary impact, the override would be void by rule. Rule meant no discretion. I asked her to note the risk. She typed and stopped. She said the system locked her out of adding comments once escalation started. An inspector van rolled in at noon sharp. Clipboard. Camera. He didn't greet me. He checked the neighbor's flooded patch, then walked straight to my valve. He photographed the tag and the tablet screen together. That pairing makes facts. I showed him my receipt. He didn't touch it. He said billing disputes were separate from field conditions. Field conditions were non-compliance until proven otherwise. The agent went quiet on the line. Not disconnected, just silent. The inspector asked if water had been restored after notice. I said no. He nodded like that answered something else. He wrote and tore a carbon copy and stuck it under my door. Secondary impact noted. Enforcement upheld pending correction. The crew didn't wait for him to leave. The cap kit came back out. The wrench clinked against metal. That sound was final in a way emails aren't. I asked the agent if there was anything left. She said the only remaining path was same-day payment posted before the cap set. I tried the app again. Verification loop. I called the bank. Automated prompts. No human. The landlord called while the wrench turned. He said the city had flagged the property. He said his insurance carrier would need assurance by end of day. Assurance of what he didn't finish. The inspector drove off. The agent came back on the line and said she was sorry. Sorry was a boundary. The worker tightened once more and stepped back. The valve disappeared under metal. The second worker snapped a photo and uploaded it. The truck pulled away. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It carried a new status. My phone buzzed with an email timestamped 1 minute later. Service capped. Restoration subject to investigation. I stood there with the receipt still open on my screen, knowing the system had moved into a phase where proof arrived too late to be counted. By afternoon, the lack of water started doing work for the city. The daycare called again. Health code required running sinks for afternoon checks. Without confirmation, my child's spot was suspended until utilities were restored. Suspension meant the next available opening, not tomorrow. The landlord showed up in person. He didn't raise his voice. He handed me a printed notice from his insurer. Active utility enforcement shifted liability. If it wasn't resolved, he'd have to file his own report to protect coverage. Reports create records even when nothing happens next. I drove to the utility office with bottled water rolling on the floor of the back seat. The lobby doors were open, but the counter was closed behind glass. A sign said field escalations were handled by appointment only. Appointments were booked through next week. I took a number anyway. It didn't light up. An employee walked past and glanced at the carbon copy sticking out of my bag. She stopped. She said secondary impact flags froze customer service actions. Frozen meant nobody at that counter could touch my account now. She pointed me to a wall phone labeled escalation desk. I picked it up. It rang once and went to voicemail. The message said leave a case number. Voicemails were returned within 48 hours. Outside, the inspector's van was parked across the street from the building. Different inspector. Same department. He was talking to a contractor and gesturing with a tablet. My address was visible on the screen from where I stood. I checked my email. A notice from the city health department had already gone out to adjacent properties. Advisory: possible contamination due to pressure loss. Advisory is a soft word that still triggers responses. The neighbor texted again. His yard crew canceled until the advisory cleared. He asked if I'd heard anything. I didn't answer. At 4:10, a new email arrived. Subject unchanged. Service adjustment. Inside was a different sentence. Restoration required proof of correction and clearance of secondary impacts. Secondary impacts now included reported property damage and childcare displacement. That was the second false exit collapsing. I had thought paying would end it. Then I thought waiting out the investigation would. Now each hour without water was generating more reasons to keep it off. The landlord called his attorney while standing in my kitchen. He asked me, carefully, how long I thought this would take. I didn't give a time. I gave a fact. The city had moved my account into a category that didn't run on hours. At 5:30, a courier taped another notice to my door. It wasn't about payment. It was about access for inspection tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning had already been taken from me. The house felt smaller as the light dropped, not because of thirst, but because every system around it was now active and none of them were waiting. At 6:10, I called the city hotline listed on the carbon copy. Not billing. Emergency services. I reported an unsafe condition caused by an incorrect municipal shutoff. I referenced the inspector photos, the advisory, and the neighbor's flooded yard. I asked for a safety supervisor, not restoration. They arrived faster than billing ever had. Different uniforms. Different authority. They shut the street valve and marked the earlier cap as non-compliant because it triggered secondary hazards without confirmed cause. That designation forced an internal stop. By 7:45, the original tag was removed under order. Water returned without ceremony. Not restored. Reinstated pending review. The hit landed an hour later. A certified email from the city's risk office. Notice of investigation into improper enforcement batch and field escalation error. The inspector's name was listed. The reassessment file was frozen. The price came immediately and stayed. The landlord issued a notice of non-renewal due to insurance exposure. The daycare slot was gone. My savings account showed 2 debits I couldn't reverse. Fees for emergency response. Fees for inspection overtime. No apology followed. No confirmation that anything was fixed. The next morning, the sink ran like nothing had happened. The valve outside was bare. No tag. No lock. I washed my hands and turned it off.